but I'm feeling bolder. So I go for the robust flavor of Bush's Grillin' Beans. They're a perfect match for steaks and chops.
Dude, I like this new Wild Side.
Air Force One has made its way into the Springfield area. You're taking a live look right now from video taken from the Springfield Branson National Airport in Springfield. This is quite an amazing opportunity for us to see this right now. Of course, Air Force One is coming right now. We can get video of that. President Donald Trump on board that plane to make a visit to local manufacturer Lauren Cook Company today. I'm Jennifer Kilman joining you live from the Color 10 studios. We're going to begin our special coverage of the president's stop in the Ozarks. We're going to follow his progress from the landing here from the plant on South Barnes to Springfield, where he's expected to speak to some of the employees and any dignitaries who might be attending the closed event. A lot of people on hand right there watching the president make his way into Springfield. Secret Service, as you can see. We have crews on the scene there. We have crews across Springfield covering this event for you today. Some of you may be wondering why this is not a public event. We asked that question yesterday. We'll get to that in just a second. Daniel Shedd is live at the airport tonight with more from there. Daniel.
Well, Jennifer, good afternoon. It's been a busy morning here at the Springfield Branson Airport. We've been here since about 5:30 or 6 o'clock this morning. What began as just a very quiet morning, just a couple of security personnel, has now turned into a full-fledged Secret Service endeavor here as Air Force One has officially landed in Springfield. Of course, out of sight right now, Air Force One just made its touchdown a couple minutes ago here in Springfield. We noticed a pretty big uptick when it came to security. When we first arrived, there were just a couple workers from the Springfield Branson National Airport, and now, of course, security personnel, military personnel. We see snipers on the roof here. It's definitely a very locked down. Of course, anytime Air Force One actually lands its plane, it's a complete no-fly zone. There is a helicopter flying into our west right now, out of view from our cameras, but it has been circling the Springfield Branson Airport. Of course, President Trump, the first president to land here in Springfield since back in 2006. We're hoping that this massive 747 can soon make its way into view. It's really just a spectacular aircraft. Of course, it's evolved over the years. Just some quick statistics on this thing before we get to view this. Of course, Air Force One, the call letters for any time that the President of the United States is actually on board. It is a custom 747. There are only a couple of them in the world that are modded just like this one. There are actually two Air Force Ones. That's because one is often used as a decoy because it is the flying Oval Office in many regards. As for just how big this plane is, I'm sure the video might not do it justice. It's 232 feet long, 195-foot wingspan. It's also 63 feet tall. Really just a spectacular sight. We're hoping we can see it come into frame here shortly.
And of course, Daniel's out there at the airport keeping an eye on Air Force One at the Springfield Branson National Airport. Some other little things we can tell you about Air Force One. It has 400 square feet of interior flooring space. There's space for the president's living quarters on board, an office area, work and rest areas for staff, press, and crew. We do know that Senator Roy Blunt on the flight with him there. The plane is crewed by U.S. Air Force personnel. It has 87 phones and can transmit live on board. It can be refueled while in the air, so it could technically stay in the air indefinitely. That's pretty crazy. Well, this feature would only be needed in an emergency, but it is pretty cool nonetheless. Of course, we are just waiting for it to get into our view. So how does it work? Well, the plane has a special fuel cap on its nose, so a second Air Force plane can connect a fuel pump to the front of the plane while flying above it. Is this a view of Air Force One right here? It has the ability to fly at a speed of more than 965 kilometers per hour, around 75% of Mach 1, the speed sound at sea level. The plane's decked out with medical facilities, including an operating table, carries an extra reserve on the president's blood type, and a refrigerator just in case. It has 2 kitchens, can cater 100 people at a time. And of course, there's a shower on board too. Situation room, of course, or space for the press. The president can even deliver a national television address from its video teleconference system. Of course, Daniel Shedd out there live at the Springfield-Branson National Airport. We have a team coverage today for you. We are excited to bring that to you in case you're joining us from home. This is the first time a U.S. sitting president has visited Springfield since 2006. That was when George W. Bush was here. This is a very cool moment for us right now. Daniel, are you joining us right now? Can you hear us?
Jennifer, let me tell you, this is something else. We talked about how big a 747 is.
Yeah.
This is phenomenal. It is incredibly loud down here. I barely hear myself talk. You talk about a plane that's over 232 feet long, 63 feet tall. I mean, 6 stories. I mean,
it's a monster.
That's absolutely incredible. So what's going to happen now is, now that the plane has actually stopped, the military personnel will go. The jets turning down right now. The two ladders will now make their way up to Air Force One, in which the president will deboard the plane. He's going to do so in front of, like I said, a lot of military personnel, a lot of Secret Service are here for this endeavor. Obviously, a huge undertaking. Anytime the president has to travel. There's also, to our left, definitely off camera, there's probably about 100 people that are in a pen just to the left of us that are here to view the president. These are supporters of the president from both the Republican Party. We also saw representatives, and actually aboard this plane is Senator Roy Blunt alongside President Donald Trump. Also happening off camera to the right, the escort service for the president, the motorcade, of course, led by the Beast. It looks like a Cadillac. Do not let that name surprise you. This thing weighs over 20,000 pounds.
Wow.
It reportedly has 5-inch thick windows. Off the back of the plane, obviously some military personnel. As to whether the president exits the plane now or in 5 or 10 minutes, we really don't know. Like you talked about earlier, there are bathrooms on this plane. There are numerous phones on this plane. Mm-hmm. The president could be in a conference call. There are so many things that they don't joke when this thing is considered the Oval Office of the sky. Really just a spectacular moment to see him in Springfield.
And we had mentioned earlier in our broadcast throughout the week, the airport right now, Ken Boyd with the airport told us that the flights would probably be delayed about 15 minutes until they can make sure Air Force One is safe and on the tarmac. And of course it is. And I believe that door is open, Daniel. What are you seeing from there?
It is open. We are seeing the Beast move up. Like I said, there are 2 of them.
Okay.
As to which one the president rides in is to be determined. Obviously, one is used as a complete decoy. On the right-hand side, obviously, some supporters and some Secret Service personnel are approaching the plane. At this point, it's expected that the president will deboard the plane and head to Loren Cook for that private rally.
Yes, we're just waiting for him to get off of Air Force One right now. As you can see, the motorcade getting ready to take him to Dale & Barnes at the Loren Cook Company in Springfield, where hundreds of people are there awaiting his arrival, as we are too right now, as you can see. Of course, you are taking a live look, if you're just joining us, of Air Force One, which has just landed moments ago at the Springfield-Branson National Airport. Daniel Shedd there for us, alongside, he had mentioned, about 100 other people waiting for the president's arrival. The public not invited to attend at the airport. We are waiting for him to get off the plane. It could take moments, like Daniel said, it could take It could take 10 more minutes. We don't know, but we do thank you for joining us. We have crews across the area. We have crews outside of Lauren Cook Company in Springfield. We have crews inside Lauren Cook Company. David Oliver, my colleague there, to give us an up-close look at what's happening inside when the president does speak today on tax reform. His speech is supposed to take about 40 minutes, and it looks like we have a little bit of movement coming out the door. What are we seeing, Daniel? There's the president.
Jennifer, that is President Donald Trump has officially made his appearance in Springfield, of course, at the top of the steps of Air Force One. Joining him to his right, Senator Roy Blunt, and right behind him, Billy Long, widely supported here in the Ozarks. That's one of the many reasons he made his appearance here in Springfield, was due to the wide support this past election with Donald Trump. He's now making his way, like I said, with Senator Roy Blunt and Representative Billy Long to the bus, which will take him to Lauren Cook.
I see Ivanka Trump. Is she there with him as well? Is that who I'm seeing? My eyes are deceiving me here a little bit. Who else is there with him?
I do believe that is Ivanka.
Okay.
Yes.
A big moment for Springfield today. Again, like we said earlier, this is the first sitting U.S. president to come into Springfield since 2006. The president joined by a group of others, including Senator Roy Blunt, Billy Long, Ivanka Trump, as we just saw. They're getting into that Cadillac there, which will be taken to Lauren Cook Company, where he will give a speech on tax reform. We had a conference call yesterday with the White House, and senior White House officials tell us they're going to talk about why we need tax reform. And why Springfield, you may ask? Well, Springfield, of course, the birthplace of Route 66. Of course, they're getting into that Cadillac there. Daniel, can you tell me a little bit about how people are reacting to the president's arrival at the airport?
Well, you know, Jennifer, we talked earlier today. The meeting at Lauren Cook is a closed event. Obviously, only employees and close supporters of Mr. Trump will be in attendance at Lauren Cook. As for the airport itself, they said, obviously, anytime the president lands or departs with Air Force One, it is completely shut down in terms of air traffic control here at the airport. That being said, there are probably about 50 to 100 supporters just to my left. As this motorcade begins to depart, I believe they're going to drive right by this group of supporters. And that's all been here. It has been very locked down from really since about 9 o'clock this morning, when Secret Service really started to show up. They had multiple canine units and Secret Service personnel sweeping for any contraband or any dangerous materials that may put the president in harm's way. But really, we haven't seen any protesters. This has all been a very pro-Trump arena here at the airport. And it looked like some movement's happening right now. President Donald Trump actually not walking straight into the beast, as they would have it. It appears that he is going to make his way to that handful of supporters here, of course, joined by many Secret Service personnel, working media that deboarded the plane. Roy Blunt and Billy Long also in attendance. And now Mr. Trump shaking the hands of many supporters. They've been here at least a couple of hours. Of course, they had to get their security clearance and then had to make their way into the airport. Also, Governor Eric Greitens right next to President Trump as he greets his supporters here at the airport.
Now shaking the hands of many supporters there. Of course, the president's been very busy this week. Yesterday, he was just in Corpus Christi in Austin talking to victim survivors of Hurricane Harvey. Today, he's in Springfield, Missouri. I guess we expected him just to get straight on the motorcade, but talking with his supporters.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, Jennifer. Like I said, the Beast and the motorcade is definitely ready to go. We are viewing actually the traveling media with the president right now, making their way towards the back of the motorcade. Of course, the Beast, the two front Cadillacs, As you can see here, these doors are massive. They're bulletproof. They carry their own oxygen tanks on board. They actually carrying a case of the president's blood, just in case the worst of the worst were to happen in this situation. They obviously lead the way in terms of this motorcade just outside the fences and the walls of the Springfield-Branson Airport. A lot of Missouri State Highway Patrol members will make their way from the airport to Lauren Cook. A relatively quick drive on the highway, I would assume. But very, very interesting to see Mr. Trump actually not hop in the beast straight away, but to take the time to go up and shake the hands of many of his constituents here. Of course, from my field of view, Senator Roy Blunt also taking the opportunity to shake the hands of many supporters. I talked to a couple of them earlier today as they were arriving, a lot of them members of the Republican Party, a lot of them obviously close acquaintances with a lot of the Republican movement here in Springfield.
From what you can see on camera too right now, from what I can see, Daniel, I'm seeing a lot of excited supporters. There's a gentleman that has his camera up real high trying to get a good picture of the president. He is jumping up and down. He is excited.
You know, there's a lot of excitement. You know, you talk about the first presidential visit since 2006. A lot of these people, I would assume, waiting a long time. You know, this has been a president divisive at times, but on the other side of the spectrum, you've also seen a lot of people extremely supportive of a president like this. You know, and I mean, it's not an outrageously hot day. It's about 80 degrees on the tarmac, probably 5 or 10 degrees hotter. You know, but they've been out here for a couple hours waiting just for really a handshake, a picture, a high five from the president as he comes here. And really, this is one of the only chances for them to see Mr. Trump, as that rally at Lauren Cook is a closed meeting in which he'll be talking about tax reform. So a lot of these supporters, probably one of the only opportunities that they're going to get, at least this visit to Springfield, to see him before he departs later today.
And as we had mentioned before, Daniel is live out at the tarmac at the Springfield-Branson National Airport, rather. We have a crews at Lauren Cook Company waiting for the president to make his way there in the motorcade. David Oliver inside alongside Colin Lingo. They're going to give us some more information on the speech when he does give that on tax reform today. This is the first of, I guess, a many state visit to different places to talk about tax reform across the U.S. We have crews outside, Heather Lewis. We have Joe Morano outside of Lauren Cook. They're going to talk about what they're seeing out there as far as supporters go, or maybe even protesters. We have Bria Douglas is out there as well. We have Jennifer Abreu, Lauren Barnes. We have a full crew. We have Dr. Brian Calfano on standby joining us to talk about the speech and what we can expect. Just a good day. So we are here for you. We are going to do team coverage, and we are going to stay with the president as he continues to talk to all of his supporters there. As Daniel had mentioned, there's about 100 people at the airport. Governor Eric Greitens with him, Roy Blunt, Billy Long, Ivanka Trump, and various media. Daniel, can you describe how many members of the media are there to greet the president?
Yeah, you know, we've seen members, actually our CBS sister station KRCG from up in Jefferson City and Columbia there in attendance. Some Kansas City reporters as well, obviously members of the Springfield media. There's an applause from President Trump. It appears as if he will now load up here on the motorcade. Once again, this motorcade, that beast right there is what they call it. It looks like a Cadillac. You can see how thick those doors are. Just an incredible, those things will get you just about anywhere you want to go. They're not very quick. Like I said, they will roll through just about any circumstance to keep the president safe. The motorcade, as I look here, you know, there's probably 4 or 5 presidential style Secret Service type vehicles. Beyond that, a lot of Tahoes, a lot of vans, and a lot of SUVs carrying the working media. Also traveling aboard Air Force One. It looks as if the motorcade is starting to leave the tarmac here, led by a Springfield police patrol car. Okay. At the front, like I said, waiting out front of the gates. Missouri State Highway Patrol leading the way.
All right, as you're looking right now live from the airport, the motorcade, the president is heading to Lauren Cook Company in Springfield at Dale and Barnes. We do not know which direction the president will be headed. He could be going down 44. He could be going down Chestnut. We do not have an idea. So if you do run into some traffic, that is probably the reason why. Of course, he is here to talk about tax reform. You're looking at supporters right there. And once President Trump arrives at the Lauren Cook plant, he will talk about tax reform at the closed event. We're going to go to my colleague, David Oliver. He's inside the plant, and he is awaiting the president's arrival there. He should be there in about 15, 20 minutes, I would say. How's the mood there, David?
Well, I would say, Jennifer, right now the mood is that of great anticipation. Anytime you have an event like this where a sitting president comes into a town for a public, or in this case, be it a private event, there is a lot of hurry up and wait involved. You've got a very large warehouse where we are located right now inside the Lauren Cook building over here near Kearney and Barnes. I'm going to guess probably 700 to 800 people here inside this venue waiting to hear from President Donald Trump as he talks about tax reform today. You've got a number of the Lauren Cook employees and their spouses who are here today. I've lived here long enough to recognize a number of the major party donors on both sides, Democrat and Republican, and I can tell you this room is filled with some of the big movers and shakers who give to the GOP during the election cycles. A lot of folks here waiting patiently for the president, who again will be here in about 20 minutes. We can tell you that the Lauren Cook family is no stranger to politics. It gave about $8,500 to the president's campaign in 2016, but even gave more money to other Republican candidates here in Missouri, including Governor Eric Greitens and then candidate John Brunner. So obviously the Lauren Cook family chosen for reasons perhaps that may be financial, but also the Lauren Cook building chosen because of its manufacturing ties here in America. In fact, we heard a short time ago on the stage from the owner of Lauren Cook Company, who talked about the fact that they will always manufacture here in America, and he said specifically they're not going to manufacture in Mexico or China. Again, the president here today talking about tax reform in America. In July, the White House put out his tax reform plan. And according to DonaldJTrump.com, the president says his plan is going to eliminate income taxes for, he says, 73 million American households. He believes about 42 million households who now file very complex tax forms will get to, under his plan, file a one-page income tax return. He also wants Americans who pay taxes to deal with 4 brackets. Right now, we currently have 7 tax brackets in America. Now, as Jennifer mentioned a little while ago, we were on a conference call yesterday with senior White House staffers who talked about the substance of this speech here today. They talked about the president coming here to talk about why we need tax reform. He's not going to get too specific on exactly how he plans to do that during this speech here today. We did ask our Washington correspondent for Color 10, Mark Meredith, earlier today to kind of weigh in on the president's speech here today. Here's what he had to say.
David, we don't expect to get a lot of detail from the president's speech today. Instead, this speech is designed as a chance to convince Americans to get Congress on board for a tax reform package. This is something that the White House has been eager to talk about ever since health care reform failed earlier this year. But Congress has been on break now for more than a month. They get back to work next week. So the White House is hoping by using today's speech there in Springfield, they'll be able to get the ball rolling on this. But it may not get very far. We're already hearing from some Senate Democrats that are blasting the idea of tax reform because they don't have the specifics. They want more information about exactly who would benefit from any tax cut reform package and exactly how the federal government could afford this without exploding the deficit more than it already is right now. The White House is going to make the case that this type of tax reform package is the best way to get the economy growing again. The president, though, will have to convince more members of his own party to also support the idea, because after what we've seen with health care, nothing comes easy with this Congress. Jennifer?
All right, thanks to Mark Meredith in Washington for that, and thanks to David Oliver on site at Lauren Cook Company. We're also going to get more perspective on the president's tax plan from our political analyst, Dr. Brian Calfano, a little later. But Joe Morano and Heather Lewis are just down the street from the Lauren Cook Company right now. There are people showing up who support the president and many who do not. So what's it like out there today, Joe and Heather?
Well, Jennifer, good afternoon. We can tell you that we are just in front of the Crossway Baptist Church and a lot of police presence picking up behind us. Barnes is closed right in front of us along where we are. It was open to vehicles and people earlier. We now know that they are not letting people past this truck that you see behind us here.
We have a few supporters right now of President Trump that are trying to get through. We're at the back side of this building. This is where the employees checked in earlier, right?
Yes, that is correct. They were coming in with Greyhound buses, parking in other directions, getting off here and going into the back side of the building.
So what we have now is a lot of people that are trying to perhaps catch a glimpse of the president in his motorcade trying to do that. This road was closed to cars, but people were able to walk by until just recently. Police have really come up on this side and are starting to turn people away. So perhaps that is where he'll be making his arrival.
And like you mentioned earlier, we don't know which way the motorcade will come in. We can tell you that Barnes is completely closed all the way to Kearney right now, and we have seen an increased police presence come up a little bit closer to us. So as to where he's going to enter Lauren Cook, we are not sure, but we do see some people out here gathering to see if they can catch a glimpse of that motorcade. We also have some people out here who are selling some things that are for Trump supporters as well.
Right, Trump supporters selling some shirts and some hats, and also there's an apartment complex just to our left here, and there was heavy security going on right there as well. No one was allowed to get in there unless they were a resident of the place, had to be able to prove that, just because it lines right up on Barnes on the street here, and so people, again, just trying to catch a glimpse, but we're still a little uncertain of that direction and which way it'll go.
And Jen, I will say that for being right outside the venue near the back where hundreds of people were filing into Lauren Cook earlier this morning, it's relatively quiet, which is a little bit unusual. There's probably about maybe a dozen people or so. There were people who were right behind the building that were able to stay there. We now know they are not letting people come past that city utilities truck that you see behind us.
Okay, Heather and Joe reporting for us live. You guys, thank you. We'll check in with you in just a little bit. Well, the message from the police chief speaks to both sides who are showing up to be heard along the streets outside of Lauren Cook. Jennifer Abreu is with some of those people right now. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Jen. Yes, we are out here on Kearney Street right now. We're just east of Glenstone, between Glenstone and Barnes. And we have been here for a few minutes. We walked up here from Lauren Cook and we saw groups of Trump supporters along the way. We were also looking for some protesters, and we were told they were down the street, down Glenstone, all the way down to Division. Earlier today, we were at Teamsters Local 245, and that's where a lot of protesters were gathering, organizing for their rally that they had planned to begin at 11:30 today. A lot of them with signs saying embrace love and stop hatred and things like that. And they had planned to line up the streets just along Glenstone from Division all the way up to Commercial. And up here now we're seeing a large group of people, of supporters that were just at the corner. They're walking down toward Barnes. They probably are trying to see if they can see the motorcade somewhere around here. Like we have heard, we don't know exactly which way the president is going to take. And I want to bring in a Springfield resident who is out here, Whitney Wood, if you want to join me now. And she is out here with a sign, and you can tell based on her sign if you are a Trump supporter, if you're a protester. Tell me, where do you stand, Whitney?
I am a Trump supporter, but I am out here to support him because he is our president and I respect him. And there's a higher calling for us all to come together and pray for our leaders and pray for each other and our country, and that we just unite in love regardless of who you voted for. We need to come together.
And I saw you out here earlier with your colleague and friend. You guys were praying. Yes. Tell me why you decided to come out here and pray. Why is that important for you?
Pray for the safety of this event today. Pray for the reason why we're out here, that we can be a light to this event today.
And you guys were talking and telling us that you were actually on your lunch break. Yes. You took the time out of work, out of your lunch break, to be out here today. Why is it important for you to participate in something like this?
To show President Trump that we support him, that Springfield does support him, and to welcome him.
And what do you think about the president coming to Springfield?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great opportunity for Springfield and to show our support and love for him.
All right, thank you so much, Whitney. And just like Whitney, hundreds of people we have seen out here supporting the president and some protesting his administration, of course. And we'll stay out here and bring you the latest, talking to both sides and tell you what their message is. Live in Springfield, Jennifer Abreu, Color 10 News, Ozarks First.
All right, Jennifer, thank you. Well, it has been quiet out there. We had reported last night that a small group of people who stood for and against the president had gotten together. They had a bit of a roundtable discussion. They talked about how today is going to be calm and peaceful, and so that way everybody can get their message out. And so far, that seems to be working for them. Well, it's been a very busy week for the president, especially given the crisis happening in Texas with Hurricane Harvey. President Trump toured the flood-ravaged cities yesterday, and here's how he reacted afterward. Have a look.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to say we love you. You are special. We're here to take care. It's going well. And I want to thank you for coming out. We're going to get you back and operating immediately. Thank you, everybody. What a crowd, what a turnout. This has been a total cooperative effort. Again, we will see you soon. I will tell you, this is historic. It's epic what happened. But you know what? It happened in Texas, and Texas can handle anything. Thank you all, folks. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, that was President Trump just yesterday in the Corpus Christi and Austin areas of Texas who were victimized by the Hurricane Harvey and Tropical Storm Harvey that just went up the Texas coast. So that was him speaking there. President Trump scheduled to speak here in Springfield for about 30 to 40 minutes. We saw earlier Daniel Shedd at the airport giving a send-off to the motorcade, which was making its way to Lauren Cook Company. David is joined by Colin Lingo, who is also inside Lauren Cook right now. And David, has the president arrived yet?
No, not yet, Jennifer. Right now, you've got a lot of people who are probably pretty antsy. They've been in here for quite some time. Whenever you have these events, these venues get locked down much earlier than the president's arrival time. So you've had people who've been filed in here for about an hour now with the building locked down tight. So they're getting a little antsy. They're standing right now, kind of milling around, talking right now. Certainly a great mood of anticipation here as the president will be arriving here, I would think, in the next 5 to 10 minutes. That short drive from the airport over here to Lauren Cook should take about 20 minutes. Certainly a lot of people waiting very patiently to hear from him today. A lot of people here who are very important as well. We saw former Senator John Ashcroft is here. I saw Congressman Jason Smith, as you reported, Billy Long and Roy Blunt on the plane, Air Force One, with the president traveling into Springfield. I've got Colin Lingo here with me. You've been here talking to some folks. I know you talked to the mayor earlier, Mayor Ken McClure of Springfield. Certainly a lot of excitement here as we await the president.
Yeah, speaking of excitement and Mayor Ken McClure, when I did get to speak with him, he was telling me he's kind of got the easiest job out of all of us today. His whole job is to greet the president when he gets here, and he said he's more than excited to do that. While I had him there, I asked him why Springfield to start off a conversation about tax reform. He said he couldn't put his finger on a reason, but he said if he had to guess, he would say because we are an economic hub and we're sort of a national crossroads, which tied into the content of the conversation that the White House officials had with us yesterday, where they said this is sort of about reestablishing American main streets. Where better to do that than the home of the American Main Street, Route 66, Springfield.
That's exactly why the president, according to White House staffers, chose this site for today's speech, because in their words, he wants to get back to Main Street USA policies, and he sees the birthplace of Route 66 as being a fitting place to come and talk about tax reform. Obviously, we've got people here waiting right now, Colin, and the people here were chosen because, you've got employees of Lauren Cook here, but you've also got people who are big donors to the GOP.
Yeah, sure. We actually spoke with some of the people as they were filing in earlier. I got to speak with one man and say, what do you hope to hear from the president here? Tax reform is sort of a broad topic. Where do you hope he goes with that? And he said, more than anything, he'd really like to hear a plan. He said people are reassured by a plan, and that's what he would like to hear from the president. He said he'd like to hear the tax code, which he says is far too dense for him, for most common folks, dwindled down into something a little more simple. And he hopes to hear that from the president today.
And again, the White House staffers telling Color 10 News yesterday during a special conference call that the president's going to be here, again, talking about why he believes we need tax reform, not necessarily how he plans to accomplish said tax reform. Certainly, we have seen a lot of important people here waiting to hear from the president today. And again, we talked about the fact that they chose Lauren Cook because it is an American manufacturing company. The owner of Lauren Lauren Cook came up here a short time ago, took the stage, talked about the company being in business for 53 years, never having any layoffs. I'm sure the president might want to tout that fact as well today. And again, the owner of Lauren Cook talking about the fact that he, in his words, they're never going to manufacture, in his words, in Mexico or in China. They're going to always manufacture here in America. And certainly that's going to be one of the main messages that the president's going to want to also kind of work off of today.
Yeah, certainly. That did seem to be the main theme of what Jerry Cook, the owner of Lauren Cook, came up and said earlier, saying, as long as I'm alive, we'll never build one of these fans in Mexico or China, saying that every fan they've ever built, including the fans that they say are powered in the White House, will be built in America, just like they always have since 1941 when they were established.
Obviously, the logistics of a presidential visit are certainly very large in terms of an undertaking for a city of our size. The Springfield Police Department has a large contingent of officers who are around this facility or also inside this facility. In fact, Police Chief Paul Williams himself is even here. He is helping to monitor this facility. And I talked to him a little short time ago, and Chief Williams said that after the president's speech today, the president has asked to meet with about 10 or 12 local police officers, including Chief Williams, because he wants to thank them for their service during this event here today. You know, we talked about this being the first time a sitting president has come to Springfield since 2006. That was George W. Bush. Prior to that, George W. Bush also came here in 2004. In 2004, he came here to give a discussion on the economy, much like we're going to hear probably here today. He appeared at SRC. In 2006, George W. Bush came here to Springfield to stump for then Senate candidate and Senator Jim Talent, who lost to Claire McCaskill. If you recall this week, the president used his tweet about coming to Springfield to kind of offer some negative criticism of Claire McCaskill in her bid for re-election. So that's a little bit of irony there that the last time we had a sitting president here was 2006, stumping for then Senate candidate Jim Talent, who eventually lost to Claire McCaskill. Right now, we're going to send things back to Jennifer in the studio. And again, we're still waiting for the president here, and hopefully in about 5 or 10 minutes, Jennifer.
All right. Well, thank you, Colin and David. We are talking a little bit about the president's speech and what we can anticipate. We're going to join Dr. Brian Calfano, who joins us via Skype tonight. Brian, thank you or this afternoon, thank you for taking time out of your day. Let's talk a little bit about that speech. What can we anticipate?
Well, Jen, I think what we're going to end up seeing is a lot of philosophical information given out by the president, a lot of red meat for folks who were there. As David and Colin have been talking about, there's a lot of big-time Republican donors there. And we should also keep in mind that really the president can essentially at this point only talk about philosophical reasons why the tax code ought to be reformed and going to a single page and all these sorts of things that we're hearing he might talk about in the speech, because any official or specific policy that gets made has to come through Congress. And so you've got, as Mark Meredith mentioned, Senate Democrats who are already raising their hand saying, hey, look, we don't know what's going to come down the road in this proposal. We don't want this to be something that the rich end up making good on in terms of getting more money and tax breaks and everything else, all that kind of rhetoric from the Democrats. And you've got Republicans who are also interested in what this is going to look like, because there are many now in Congress, particularly in the House of Representatives, who are worried about how much tax reform is going to affect our deficit and our long-term debt. I think it's important to keep in mind we're about $20 trillion in long-term debt in this country. And this whole debate over raising the debt ceiling coming up next month, this all ties together with questions about tax reform and about spending reform. It's a lot easier for Washington, D.C. to talk a lot about taxes and moving around the different tax brackets and the sort of things we might hear from the president today. But in terms of brass tacks, no pun intended, when it comes to cutting government programs, we've seen that the president has done a thorough job of saying, look, these are the areas that I want to cut. But the pushback from members of the House and Senate may be pretty substantial, because when you get down to it, as Tip O'Neill, the former Speaker of the House, said, look, all politics is local. And even representatives like Billy Long and senators like Roy Blunt, they're going to have interests in Missouri. They're going to have interests in other parts of the state, and other representatives and senators around the country will have similar interests in keeping government investment in their communities strong. That means spending money. So the delicate balance really between how much money gets spent and how much the government takes in from tax revenue is all part of this discussion. And that's the reason why I think overall the president wants to stay away from those details today.
All right, Dr. Brian Calfano is going to stick with us throughout our broadcast. Thanks for joining us for that for now. And Color 10's Bria Douglas is outside of Lauren Cook tonight with supporters and protesters. She joins us now live with what she knows. Hi, Bria.
Hi, Jennifer. I'm standing at the intersection of Kearney and Barnes Avenue, where a large crowd has just witnessed President Trump's motorcade turn onto Barnes Avenue. And they tell me with everything that's happened in these 7 months during his administration, they still say he has earned their vote. And one of those supporters is with me right now. His name is John. As you can see, he has a Make America Great Again sign. John, how excited are you about President Trump's visit today?
Real excited.
And why does he have your vote? I mean, with everything that's happened, you said you still support him. Why is that?
Support him 100%. We need him.
And what are you hoping to see today?
Peace.
How excited were you to see the motorcade?
It was very nice.
Something that doesn't obviously happen very often here in Springfield, to see a presidential motorcade pass through, but we all just witnessed it. And now the anti-Trump fans, the anti-Trump supporters and the pro-Trump supporters are kind of mingled together right now with signs and flags. So back to you, Jennifer.
All right, Bria Douglas joining us live outside of the Lauren Cook Company. Now we're going to head inside where David Oliver is there awaiting the president's arrival inside. Hi, David.
Jennifer, right now, you're not going to see me. I'm just going to stay off camera,
Sure.
but we're trying to show you as much as we can here from our limited spot here on the podium where the media is. But right now, you've got a lot of people coming in. Ivanka Trump has entered the building. Billy Long is here. We just saw Lieutenant Governor Mike Parson walk into the room as well. So the president is here. He is about to make his entrance. We've got other dignitaries coming in right now. People are on their feet watching and waiting as we kind of watch to see when the president will enter the room. But again, a number of people have come in. The Secret Service just placed his speech on the podium a short time ago. They placed the presidential emblem on the podium where the president will be speaking today. But again, the crowd right now inside, I'm estimating 600 to 800 people maybe, is on its feet right now waiting for the president to enter the room again. I mentioned Ivanka Trump is traveling with her father today. We're not getting reports that Melania, the First Lady, is with the president today. I could be wrong on that. We will have to just wait and see. But again, the crowd here, very excited right now. They've been waiting for quite some time to hear the president talk about tax reform. Again, he's going to talk about why we need tax reform, not necessarily how he plans to achieve said tax reform. But one of the things he wants to do, folks, is he wants to simplify your income tax returns. And he says in some cases, many people who file complex returns that are many pages long, he wants to take that down to a one-page return. So we will see if the president and Congress can make that happen. Again, we're live inside Lauren Cook. This is certainly a location that was chosen for political reasons, perhaps fundraising reasons as well. They gave quite a bit of money to the Trump campaign in 2016. Brian Calfano, if you're with me and you can hear me, obviously these kinds of I don't want to say stumps, but these kinds of stops are certainly strategic in terms of why he chose Lauren Cook and why he chose Springfield.
David, that's right. And I think it's important to remember, too, that this in a lot of ways is a reward for Billy Long and for Roy Blunt, and to some extent Eric Greitens, but really Long and Blunt for doing a good job in delivering a large percentage of votes for President Trump in the election in Southwest Missouri. Having a president visit, irrespective of how many people are out there protesting against the president, is always a boon when you're talking about elected officials of the same party in that local area. And so this is really a political holiday for Blunt and for Long. And I don't think that it is a coincidence that both Blunt and Long have been very close to the president on various issues, policy issues at least, that he's tried to push over the last 6 or 7 months. And I think this, in addition to being the whole backdrop with Route 66 and all of the Main Street discussion that we talked about a few minutes ago, it's also an opportunity for President Trump to reward his political allies. Like, there's so much talk about defections within the Republican Party and Republican senators especially who are looking to get off of the Trump train because of the various controversies of late. But the president still has his supporters in both the House and the Senate. And I think even if they would maybe differ a little bit with the president and some of his rhetoric on certain issues, both Billy Long and Roy Blunt are pretty tight with this administration. And I think you're seeing that rewarded today with this visit.
Well, obviously, Brian, the president choosing Springfield, as you mentioned, too, because of, again, as you talked about, his large base of support here. And I go back to President George W. Bush. You know, I covered for Color 10 his appearances here in 2004 and 2006. We were more of a toss-up state back then. A lot of candidates would make stops in Missouri back then. We've become more of a red state now. And, you know, in the 8 years of the Obama administration, outside of his appearance in Joplin, I can't think of a time that he came to the southwest Missouri area, not because he didn't like us, but because he knew that his support base here was much smaller because he was a Democrat. And so you've got people here who are going to throw their support behind this president, and that's part of the reason why he's here today, because he knows he's going to enjoy a large crowd of people who are faithful to his cause.
That's right. And the thing, too, that I think is fascinating about all of this is if you remember back to the primary in Missouri, Republican Party primary last year, that area of Missouri, southwest Missouri, ended up being Ted Cruz country, essentially. Ted Cruz did really well in southwest Missouri. President Trump did not. And so what you're seeing here, I think, too, is the president trying to consolidate his Republican supporters. I'm sure there are some donors in that room who may be very committed to the Republican Party, but not necessarily to President Trump, at least early on in that cycle last year. And here you see the president trying to, in some way, bring the party together in southwest Missouri to coalesce behind the Trump brand. The president, from his days as a reality TV show host, is very big on brand, what the name Trump symbolizes. And I think that's true for his political views and his political persona as well. And so if he can get enough Republicans to sort of solidify behind him, he can effectively move the party agenda in whatever direction he wants. Presidents always have the ability to move the party agenda in the way that they want, but the discussion about President Trump has always been a little bit about whether he's a true Republican and this sort of thing. I think a lot of that goes away the more he makes these very local stops and gets out and meets local party leaders and makes the kinds of connections that he was not able to maybe make in the primary, where he did a lot of wholesale politicking. He wasn't out there doing a lot of the retail, in your face, I'm talking to you now, but he would go out and do a lot of large media events, maybe not necessarily meeting the people on a one-to-one basis and making a lot of the connections with folks that he ended up needing to make for the general election. This is an opportunity for him now to really not only say thank you to folks like Roy Blunt and Billy Long, but also to meet local officials in the Missouri Republican Party, in Greene County and in Springfield, and have their support as he looks to a re-election opportunity in 2020.
Yeah, I would say, I would echo those comments, Brian, and in fact say that this audience here, outside of the fact that it is a large base of Lauren Cook workers and their spouses, the people here were handpicked. And I alluded to this earlier. You know, I've covered the news and politics here in this area long enough to know some of the movers and shakers on both sides, Democrat and Republican, and I have seen personally a number of people walk into this room today who I know are large donors to the Republican Party. But just to echo what you said, I know some of these people that I have watched walk in here today were not necessarily supporters of Donald Trump in that primary season. So you've got those people who perhaps were supporting a Ted Cruz, like you talked about, who are now, you know, saying we're going to get behind this president, stand behind his policies, and obviously be here to show our support for him here in the Ozarks today.
Exactly. And this is going to be a home run for the president. He's got a very friendly crowd, obviously, as you said, handpicked. But it's also in a part of the country where he had, 70% support. Hillary Clinton had not a chance at having a competitive election or a race in Missouri, particularly in southwest Missouri, going back to last year. So this is really a chance for the president to hit a home run from a philosophical standpoint, talking about an issue, taxation, that goes back in Republican annals at least decades, going back at least to Ronald Reagan and his call for what he called supply-side tax cuts. There's going to be a little bit of a different viewpoint, I think, offered by the president today. As we've been talking about, he's going to end up calling for a simplified tax structure, a more simplified tax code. I think in the end, it's really going to come down to whether he can get allies in Congress like Billy Long and Roy Blunt to carry the water for him, because as everybody knows, Congress has to write the legislation. The president can make whatever recommendations that he wants, but really it's Congress that will have to work this out. And it's not clear that even Republicans are on board with whatever the president wants to propose. As we saw last month with the healthcare reform debacle so-called, falling apart in that last-ditch effort over on the Senate side. It's not a clear win when you have a Republican president demand that a Republican Congress undertake reform of any kind, let alone something as large as our tax code. So whether or not the president is ultimately successful with the specifics, we're not yet sure, but it's good to have a philosophical argument, at least as to why taxes should be reduced and on whom, and to get the process of getting our taxes done under control. I think whether you're a liberal or Republican, a Democrat or conservative, it really is something that people all across the country can relate to. Come April 15th, we go, oh my goodness, another year, we have to get these taxes in. You're paying your accountant, you're paying a lawyer, whatever it is, to help you work through all of your receipts and all the sort of things you accumulate over a year to prove your income and these sorts of things. It's very difficult. And really, if you look at the thousands of pages in the tax code, it's very hard to even know what to do half the time. A lot of people end up, unfortunately, getting in trouble because they're not filing their taxes properly. The IRS goes after them. I mean, how many of these horror stories do we have to hear? So this is a really easy, in some ways, home run for the president to hit by harping on an issue that talks about, I can imagine him saying, getting the special interests out of the tax policy and all the sorts of things that he'll talk about by simplifying the tax code. Again, this is going to be a good opportunity for the president to lay forth his philosophical view. And again, part two of this is what ends up happening with Congress when it reconvenes later next month.
I can tell you, Brian, that right now, after covering a number of these events over the years for Color 10, whenever the president gets to a venue such as this, the Secret Service, which travels with the president, will very often appear at the front of the stage. 2 agents have now put themselves at the front of the stage, which would indicate that the president is in the building, and he is perhaps backstage meeting with some other supporters before he comes into this a larger venue to meet with the crowd that is here right now. You know, Brian, there's been a lot of talk about this president not sticking to script, if you will, and I'm curious, you know, in his tweet this week, he talked a little bit about some harsh words involving Senator Claire McCaskill. Do you anticipate we're going to hear anything about that particular Senate race here in this forum today?
Sure. I mean, this is a president who is more than happy to stir the pot and more than happy to advance some political controversy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Partisan politics is really part of our political DNA in this country. But, you know, he might be a little more circumspect simply because he could recall that yesterday when he was visiting Texas, as Jen pointed out, he had to help people be the comforter chief. And I think
okay, I'm going to interrupt you, Brian, right now, because right now the president has been introduced into this crowd. He's making his way to the stage right now. President Donald Trump on the stage right now at Lauren Cook in Springfield, Missouri. Let's take a listen in as he addresses the crowd.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so nice, and we appreciate it, and all of the people outside that were waving proudly the American flag, believe me, we appreciate it very much. I want to thank Jerry Cook, Steve Berney, and all of the tremendous employees here at the Lauren Cook Company for hosting us today. Where is Jerry? Where is Jerry? Thank you, Jerry. What a job. I've heard so much about you. It's a great honor to know you, Jerry. Thank you. I also want to welcome the many distinguished guests who are here with us for this very important event. Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. Thank you, Steve. Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross. Small Business Administrator, which, by the way, is a very large business, I will tell you that, Linda McMahon, a friend of mine. And from the purely political world, a really great friend who did such an incredible job with his beautiful wife at the inauguration, Senator Roy Blunt. Thank you. Thank you. Where's Roy? Thank you, Roy. Governor Greitens is here, who's doing some job. Thank you, Governor. Special. Lieutenant Governor Parson. Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And our great members of Commerce, I want to thank you all for coming. There's so many. I was asking the governor and Roy, I said, do you think I should announce them all? I have so many. But I'm honored that they're here. Representative Sam Graves. Representative Vicky Hartzler. It's been terrific. My friend for a long time and just somebody that he liked me from the beginning and I liked him. Billy Long. Where's Billy? Billy. Right, Billy? Right from the beginning. Blaine Luetkemeyer. Where's Blaine? Good. Thank you, Blaine. Representative Jason Smith. Jason, thank you for everything, Jason. Representative Ann Wagner. Hi, Ann. Good job, Ann. And I don't know. We have so many more. Anybody I forgot? Right? Everything okay? Good, I got it. You I remember more than anybody. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And to the congressmen, congresswomen, we very much appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Before we begin, I'd like to take a few moments to discuss the deeply tragic situation in Texas and Louisiana. As we all know, our Gulf Coast was hit over the weekend with a devastating hurricane of historic proportion. Torrential rains and terrible flooding continue to pose a grave danger to life and to property. Our first responders have been doing absolutely heroic work to shepherd people out of harm's way, and their courage and devotion has saved countless lives. They represent truly the very best of America. We must be vigilant. We must protect the lives of our people. I was on the ground in Texas yesterday to meet with Governor Abbott, who is doing, by the way, an incredible job, and local officials so that we could coordinate the very big and unprecedented federal response. In difficult times such as these, we see the true character of the American people, their strength, their love, and their resolve. We see friend helping friend, neighbor helping neighbor, and stranger helping stranger. And together, we will endure and we will overcome. To those affected by this storm, we are praying for you, and we are here with you every single step of the way. And I can speak, I know, for the people in this room, every step of the way. To those Americans who have lost loved ones, all of America is grieving with you, and our hearts are joined with yours forever. The citizens of Texas and the Gulf Coast need all the prayers, support, and resources our communities have to offer. Recovery will be tough, but I have seen the resilience of the American spirit firsthand all over this country. To the people of Houston and across Texas and Louisiana, we are here with you today. We are with you tomorrow, and we will be with you every single day after to restore, recover, and rebuild. Our thoughts and prayers remain firmly with the citizens and our fellow people, great, great people, all affected by this tragedy. We're also glad to be back in the heartland with the very, very fine folks of Missouri. And I said to Senator Blunt, and I said to Billy Long on the plane coming in, can I say Missouri, or should I say Missouri? Okay? And they said, whatever you want is okay. So I said, good. But I'm especially pleased to be here in Springfield, the birthplace of a great American icon, the legendary Route 66. Who would have known that? This is the place where the Main Street of America got its start, and this is where America's Main Street will begin its big, beautiful comeback that you are seeing it right now. This is a comeback of historic proportions. You're seeing it happen right now. Right? You're seeing it. We're here today to launch our plans to bring back Main Street by reducing the crushing tax burden on our companies and on our workers. Our self-destructive tax code cost Americans millions and millions of jobs, trillions of dollars, and billions of hours spent on compliance and paperwork. And you have seen what's happening with regulations. They're going fast. We need regulations, but many of them are unnecessary, and they are going fast. That is why the foundation of our job creation agenda is to fundamentally reform our tax code for the first time in more than 30 years. I want to work with Congress, Republicans, and Democrats alike on a plan that is pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, and pro-American. There is no more fitting place to launch this effort than right here in the American heartland, surrounded by hardworking men and women whose skill, determination, and drive are truly second to none. And by the way, before I start, Ivanka Trump, I see my beautiful daughters in the audience. Stand up, honey. She's working very hard. I'm very proud of Ivanka. For many decades, Route 66 captured the American spirit. The communities along this historic route were a vivid symbol of America's booming industry. Truck drivers hauled made-in-America goods along this vital artery of commerce. Families passed through bustling towns on their way to explore the great American West, and high-quality manufacturing jobs lifted up communities, gave Americans a paycheck that could support a family. Mr. Cook is a great example of the people that do it. Yeah. Stand up, Mr. Stand up. Yeah. I think they like you. And provided millions of our fellow citizens with the pride and dignity that comes with work. But in recent years, millions of Americans have watched that prosperity slip away in the rear view mirror. And it wasn't pleasant to watch, especially for me. I would sit back, I was in business, and I could see what was happening. Wasn't good. If we want to renew our prosperity and to restore opportunity, then we must reduce the tax burden on our companies and on our workers. In the last 10 years, our economy has grown at only around 2% a year. You look at other countries and you look at what their GDP is. They're unhappy when it's 7, 8, 9. And I speak to them, leaders of the countries. How are you doing? Not well, not well. Why? GDP is down to 7%. And I'm saying we were hitting 1% just a number of months ago. So we're going to change that around, folks, that I can tell you, and we're going to change it around fast. And today, a very appropriate day that this should happen, we just announced that we hit 3% in GDP. It just came out. And on a yearly basis, as you know, the last administration, during an 8-year period, never hit 3%. So we're really on our way. If we achieve sustained 3% growth, that means 12 million new jobs and $10 trillion of new economic activity over the next decade. That's some numbers. And I happen to be one that thinks we can go much higher than 3%. There's no reason why we shouldn't. So this is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver real tax reform for everyday, hardworking Americans. And I am fully committed to working with Congress to get this job done. And I don't want to be disappointed by Congress. Do you understand me? Do you understand? Understand. Congress. I think Congress is going to make a comeback. I hope so. Tell you what, the United States is counting on it. Here are my 4 principles for tax reform. First, we need a tax code that is simple, fair, and easy to understand. That means getting rid of the loopholes and complexity that primarily benefit the wealthiest Americans and special interests. Our last major tax rewrite was 31 years ago. It eliminated dozens of loopholes and special interest tax breaks, reduced the number of tax brackets from 15 to 2, and lowered tax rates for both individuals and businesses. At the time, it was really something special. Since then, our tax laws have tripled in size, and the tax code itself now spans more than 2,600 pages, and most of it is not understandable. Tax rates have increased, and special interest loopholes have crept back into the system. The tax code is now a massive source of complexity and frustration for tens of millions of Americans. In 1935, the basic 1040 form that most people file had 2 simple pages of instruction. Today, that basic form has 100 pages of instructions, and it's pretty complex stuff. The tax code is so complicated that more than 90% of Americans need professional help to do their own taxes. This enormous complexity is very unfair. It disadvantages ordinary Americans who don't have an army of accountants while benefiting deep-pocketed special interests. And most importantly, this is wrong. First and foremost, thank you. First and foremost, our tax system should benefit loyal, hardworking Americans and their families. That is why tax reform must dramatically simplify the tax code, eliminate special interest loopholes. And I'm speaking against myself when I do this, I have to tell you. And I might be speaking against Mr. Cook, and we're both okay with it. Is that right? It's crazy. We're speaking, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, you know? But we're doing the right thing. True. And allow the vast majority of our citizens to file their taxes on a single simple page without having to hire an accountant. Second, we need a competitive tax code that creates more jobs and higher wages for Americans. It's time to give American workers the pay raise that they've been looking for many, many years. In 1986, Ronald Reagan led the world by cutting our corporate tax rate to 34%. That was below the average rate for developed countries at the time. Everybody thought that was a monumental thing that happened. But then, under this pro-America system, our economy boomed. It just went beautifully, right through the roof. The middle class thrived, and median family income increased. Other countries saw the success. They looked at us. They saw, what is America doing? What's happening with the United States? And they acted very swiftly by cutting their taxes lower and lower and lower and reforming their tax systems to be far more competitive than ours. Over the past 30 years, the average business tax rate among developed nations fell from 45% to less than 24%, and some countries have an unbelievably low tax, including, by the way, China and some others that are highly competitive and really doing very well against us. They are taking us, frankly, to the cleaners. So we have no choice. We must lower our taxes. And your senator, Claire McCaskill, she must do this for you, and if she doesn't do it for you, you have to vote her out of office. She's got to make that commitment. She's got to make that commitment. If she doesn't do it, just can't do this anymore with the obstruction and the obstructionists. If we don't get tax cuts and reform approved, potentially the biggest ever, we're looking for the biggest ever, jobs and our country cannot take off the way they should. And it could be much worse than that. But at a minimum, they won't take off the way they should. The Dems are looking to obstruct tax cuts and tax reform, just like they obstructed so many other things, including administration appointments and health care. Not one vote. We got not one vote to try and fix health care and get rid of Obamacare. The strategy of our economic rivals has worked. They made their taxes lower, and far lower in many cases than ours, and jobs left our country. Large corporations changed their business models by exporting jobs to other countries and then shipping their goods back to the United States, where they'd make massive profits and they wouldn't be paying tax to us either. So we lost the jobs, we lost the taxes, they closed the buildings, they closed the plants and factories. We got nothing but unemployment. We got nothing. Other businesses, even classic American brands, switched their headquarters to foreign countries. Because of this and other reasons, like weak borders, America remains stuck in the past. Although I have to tell you, we have General Kelly here today, and we stopped 78% going up to 80% on the border traffic coming through in just a short period of time. He's done some job. Whole different world out there right now. Today, we are still taxing our businesses at 35%, and it's way more than that. And think of it, in some cases, way above 40% when you include state and local taxes in various states. The United States is now behind France, behind Germany, behind Canada, Ireland, Japan, Mexico, South Korea, and many other nations. Also, with these countries, and almost every country, we have massive trade deficits, numbers that you would not believe. But this administration is going to fix that one by one. We're fixing it. We're working right now on NAFTA, the horrible, terrible NAFTA deal that took so much business out of your state and out of your cities and towns. And we're working on it. Let's see what happens. Mexico is not happy. But as I told them, you made a lot of money for a lot of years and everybody left you alone. We got to change this deal, and hopefully we can renegotiate it. But if we can't, we'll terminate it and we'll start all over again with a real deal. So when it comes to the business tax, we are dead last. Can you believe that? So this cannot be allowed to continue any longer. America must lead the way, not follow from behind. We have gone from a tax rate that is lower than our economic competitors to one that is more than 60% higher. We have totally surrendered our competitive edge to other countries. We have totally surrendered. We're not surrendering anymore. Ideally, and I say this for our Secretary of the Treasury, we would like to bring our business tax rate down to 15%, which would make our tax rate lower than most countries, but still by no means the lowest, unfortunately, in the world. But it would make us highly competitive. In other words, foreign companies have more than a 60% tax advantage over American companies. They can pay their workers more, sell their products and services at lower cost, and still make more money than their U.S. competitors. We cannot restore our wealth if we continue to put our businesses at such a tremendous disadvantage. We must reduce the tax rate on American businesses so they keep jobs in America, create jobs in America, and compete for workers right here in America, the America we love. Thank you. Thank you very much. Because when businesses compete for labor, your wages will go up. Lower taxes on American business means higher wages for American workers, and it means more products made right here in the USA. When I was growing up, I always used to see the signs, and it was always stamped on the product, made in the USA. You don't see it anymore. We're going to go back to made in the USA. Made in the USA. The third principle for tax reform is a crucial one: tax relief for middle-class families. In a way, and I've been saying this for a long time, they've been sort of the forgotten people. But they're not forgotten any longer, I can tell you that. We will lower taxes for middle-income Americans so they can keep more of their hard-earned paychecks, and they can do lots of things with those paychecks. And that really means buying product ideally made in this country, but that means they'll go out and they'll spend their money, and it will be a beautiful thing to watch. This includes helping parents afford child care and the cost of raising a family. That's so important to Ivanka Trump. Very, very important to everybody in this room, but so important to my daughter. It's one of her real big beliefs. And She's very committed to that. Right, Ivanka? We believe that ordinary Americans know better than Washington how to spend their own money, and we want to help them take home as much of their money as possible and then spend it. So they'll keep their money, they'll spend their money, they'll buy our product, our factories will be moving again, companies are going to move back into our country, jobs are going to prosper, and our country is going to be just like it says on that beautiful red hat. It says, "Make America great again." That's what we're going to do. Right? Fourth and finally, we want to bring back trillions of dollars in wealth that's parked overseas. Because of our high tax rate and horrible, outdated bureaucratic rules, large companies that do business overseas will often park their profits offshore to avoid paying a high United States tax if the money is brought back home. So they leave the money over there. The amount of money we're talking about is anywhere from $3 to $5 trillion. Can you believe that? By making it less punitive for companies to bring back this money, and by making the process far less bureaucratic and difficult, we can return trillions and trillions of dollars to our economy and spur billions of dollars in new investments in our struggling communities and throughout our nation. It's time to invest in our country, to rebuild our communities, and to hire our great American workers. My administration is embracing a new economic model. It's called, very simply, the American model. Under this system, we will encourage companies to hire and grow in America, to raise wages for American workers, and to help rebuild our American cities and communities. That is how we will all succeed and grow together as one team with one shared sense of purpose and one glorious American destiny. So today I'm calling on all members of Congress, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, to support pro-American tax reform. They have to do it. It's time. They have to do it. It is time. I'm calling on Congress to provide a level playing field for our workers and our companies, to attract new companies and businesses to our shores, and to put more money into the pockets of everyday, hardworking people, and also into the pockets of our companies so they can continue to grow and expand. What could possibly be more bipartisan than allowing families to keep more of what they earn and creating an environment for real job and wage growth in the country that we love so much? So let's put, or at least try to put, the partisan posturing behind us and come together as Americans to create the 21st century tax code that our people deserve. If we do this, if we unite in the name of common sense and the name of common good, then we will add millions and millions of new jobs, bring back trillions of dollars, and we will give America the competitive advantage that it so desperately needs and has been looking for so long. It's time. Products made with American hands, American labor, and American grit will once again be delivered throughout the world. That's true. True. It's time. Instead of exporting our jobs, we will export our goods. Our jobs will both stay here in America and come back to America. We'll have it both ways. Millions of struggling citizens will be lifted from welfare to work. They will love getting up in the morning. They will love going to their job. They will love earning a big, fat, beautiful paycheck. They will be proud again. That is the future I want for our people. That is the future I want for America. A nation where we are proud, prosperous, united, and free. Today, I am asking every citizen to join me in dreaming big and bold and daring things, beautiful things, for our country. I am asking every member of Congress, of which we have many with us today, to join me in unleashing America's full potential. I am asking everyone in this room and across the nation to join me in demanding nothing but the best for our nation and for our people. And if we do these things, and if we care for and support each other and love each other, then we will truly make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Governor, thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
As you just saw, President Donald Trump speaking to folks, David saying 600 to 800 people at Lauren Cook Company here in Springfield, mainly talking about tax reform and how it can benefit the middle class with his plan that he has. He started by talking, if you're just joining us now, he started by talking about the crisis in Louisiana and Texas with Hurricane Harvey just ravaging that area down there. Why he came to Springfield, because obviously the birthplace of Route 66. He says that this is a good place to start his tax reform plan and to let people know here what he plans to do. Some of the things that he touched on that he wants to do include eliminate loopholes and get a competitive tax code that creates more jobs with higher wages. David Oliver joining me. He had a front row seat at the speech today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about reaction from the room there. David.
Well, Jennifer, obviously very enthusiastic reception by this crowd here at Lauren Cook today to what the president had to say in terms of tax reform. Of course, he began his speech by welcoming a number of the dignitaries who joined him here today, including Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, and SBA Administrator Linda McMahon. Also thanking members of Congress who are here today, Sam Graves, Vicky Hartzler, Billy Long, Blaine Luetkemeyer, Jason Smith, Ann Wagner, and of course, Senator Roy Blunt, who accompanied him on Air Force One. Again, he talked at first, Jennifer, about what he saw in Texas yesterday, calling the first responders there that he spoke with yesterday the best of America, saying we must be vigilant and protect lives there, saying that we would endure and overcome the tragedies that have happened in Texas. He went on to talk about basically his proposals in terms of tax reform without giving too many specifics, kind of talking more in broad terms about what he wants to do. He wants to make a plan that is pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-America. He also announced here today that in terms of our gross domestic product, we've seen pretty much 2% growth year after year here in America. He announced today that as of right now, we have hit 3% GDP in America, 3%. He claims that if we maintain that 3% during his administration, that would lead to 12 million new jobs created here in America. He wants to simplify the tax code. He says he wants to take the business tax rate down to 15%. Also provide tax relief to middle-class families. The president only taking one small jab and going off script, perhaps a little bit today, taking a jab at Senator Claire McCaskill as he talked about wanting members of Congress to get on board with his wishes for tax reform. He said to the crowd here that if your Senator Claire McCaskill does not do that, you must vote her out of office, to which the crowd gave a raucous round of applause. So again, Jennifer, people are filing out right now. The president going to be making that trip back to the Springfield Branson National Airport, take about 20 minutes, but he's going to be backstage here, as I mentioned earlier, meeting with some local law enforcement. Police Chief Paul Williams here in Springfield told me earlier when he spoke to me that he would be meeting with the president backstage and a number of other local officers because the president wanted to meet with them personally to thank them for their service and thank them for what they did here in terms of protection for he and his staff today. So, Jennifer, we're going to have a complete wrap-up coming up on Color 10 News tonight. We'll throw it back to you in the studio now.
All right, David Oliver from Lauren Cook Company for us, talking about President Trump's speech there at Lauren Cook that just ended a couple minutes ago. President Trump talked about a new economic model called the American model. He said he wants to grow as one team with one purpose. He called on all members of Congress, as you just heard, to support tax reform. He says it is time. We're going to join in with our political analyst, Dr. Brian Calfano, via Skype. He was listening in as well. What is your reaction to Donald Trump's speech?
Jen, it was a good speech. I think one of the best that the president has given, certainly in the last several months, probably the top. It was on point. He did have a few digressions, but that's Donald Trump, and that's his style. From a substantive standpoint, it's really hard for a Republican president to screw up a pro-tax reform speech. The president, as I thought he would do, hit a home run in terms of laying out for a lot of folks what the great frustration is about our tax code in this country. It is simply too complex. There's a lot of so-called special interest goodies in there. You have thousands of pages. People can't make sense of it. And this is true of people who are across the ideological and the political spectrum. It's not just a Republican issue, but Republicans tend to do better than Democrats in explaining why we need to reform taxes. I think going forward, what the trick is going to be for the Trump administration is to be able to link not just the need to reform the tax code from a simplification standpoint, but to make the cause and effect argument effectively. Yeah, we could take down the corporate tax rate from the current 35%. But does that mean that we're going to get into a tax rate war with other countries to the point where we have this race to the bottom and the companies sit back and say, well, thanks, U.S., for doing this, but we're going to keep our manufacturing overseas because not only do we still have a somewhat better tax structure to deal with in those other countries, we have a lower cost of labor. And that's really where a lot of this ends up rubbing up against each other in terms of competing interests. The president wants to have wages go up, wants to have the middle class and the American working class do better, and I think that's a strength of the president's policy. But in terms of getting people to a point where they're not going to get paid a lot of money, companies are in that position. They're not wanting to pay people a ton if they can get it cheaper overseas, and I think that's going to be a struggle for the president moving forward.
All right, Dr. Brian Calfano, thank you. Let's listen into a couple of President Trump's statements.
So we have no choice. We must lower our taxes. And your senator, Claire McCaskill, she must do this for you. And if she doesn't do it for you, you have to vote her out of office. The Dems are looking to obstruct tax cuts and tax reform, just like they obstructed so many other things, including administration appointments and health care. Not one vote. We got not one vote to try and fix health care. So today I'm calling on all members of Congress, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, to support pro-American tax reform.
Of course, he's talking about his plan, which is pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-American. The president says Americans' prosperity has slipped away because the U.S. imposed a crushing tax burden on people what has to happen for tax reform to get consensus in Washington. Brian's joining us again from via Skype. And Brian, can you answer that a little bit for us?
Well, what has to happen, Jen, is for politicians to begin to define what they mean by the middle class. The president talks about the middle class. People sitting at home watching this go, yeah, that's me. They may make $250,000 or more and still think they're middle class. And so the devil, as they say, is in the details with all of this. We need to figure out where this middle class boundary is and see what policies are targeted to help them in this proposed reform. That's going to be really where a lot of the president's critics are focused as well. If you look at what Democrats tend to want to do, they don't want to do tax cuts for what they say is the top 0.1% or 1% of the economy and the working people in this country. They want to provide working people with as much tax relief as possible, but not giving tax giveaways away to those who are going to be ending up at the top of the income scale, making over, say, $250,000 a year. That tends to be where the dividing line is. At this point, again, this is so early in the process, we don't know where the negotiations are going to open up. But let me just also say really quickly, one of the things about President Trump's philosophical discussion here is it really does put the onus on Congress to get this job done. And in a way, that's actually more constitutional than what we're used to seeing from presidents. Presidents tend to come in with a lot of detailed plans. This is what we want to do. Let's make it happen and pass it through both chambers of Congress and send it back to me to sign. In this case, for whatever reason, the president's saying, look, Congress, you're in charge of figuring out what these laws are supposed to be. Write something along these lines that I like philosophically, and then send it to me, and we'll get something done for the American people. Obviously, a long process ahead, but I think he's laid down some pretty useful markers for the debate going forward.
All right, Dr. Brian Calfano, thank you. None of the people outside of Lauren Cook, though, could hear those president's comments, but they could have watched it in our live stream at ozarksfirst.com. Jennifer Abreu is standing near the demonstrators who showed up hoping to send a message to the president. So how's the crowd control outside, Jennifer?
Hi, Jen. Yeah, it's pretty calm out here. I was actually talking to some of the legal observers earlier today, and they said this is a pretty boring protest and nothing happened. Everything was pretty peaceful. We did see some protesters and supporters talking earlier, but they were just, exchanging ideas and nothing, no violence, anything like that. We have been here for a while now. We saw a huge crowd of supporters rush down Kearney here where we are. Barnes is just down the road. We are very close to Glenstone now. And after the motorcade came through, they all rushed down there. And after that, the crowd dispersed. But a few supporters and protesters still out here. I have been talking to some of them. And right now, I will bring in Doug Morris, a Springfield resident. And he's holding a sign that says, tax the rich. And of course, the president just got done talking about tax reform. Doug, tell me why you're here today.
I'm mostly here to obviously show my, displeasure with Donald Trump and the current administration. Specifically, I know he's talking about taxes today. One thing that I really do not agree with is the fact that he wants to build the wall now with our money instead of Mexico, who was supposedly going to pay for it. But now it's on us, the taxpayers, and the people who even voted for him, who are actually going to be footing the bill for this wall.
And you're here with a group of people. You guys have different signs. Yours specifically says tax the rich. Why?
I believe that, so we have, our national budget, and it has to come from somewhere. So when you want to do these things like build a wall or whatever it is you want to do, it doesn't make any sense to not tax the rich. Specifically, Donald Trump has bragged about not paying any taxes whenever he should be paying upwards of, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in taxes, just like the rest of us do. I mean, you pay your part to be a part of this nation. That's what makes it so great. Why should anyone be exempt?
How long have you been out here today?
I've been out here about an hour, hour and a half. I started off in the Resist Trump movement, which is more along Glenstone. And I moved over here just to see what the Trump gathering is all about. Unfortunately, I only see, 20, 30 people out here. It's not nearly as big as the Resistance, so I think that's a win.
What was the energy like when you were out here? What did you see out here? What kind of feedback did you get from the crowd?
One thing I really noted was whenever I was in the against Trump movement, people that were for Trump, people with flags hanging out their cars driving by, it was kind of like boo, ha ha ha. But then you get over here and it became a lot more hostile. Specifically, one of the guys behind me, they are just very, don't get close to me, or like things are going to happen, buddy, things like that, and threats where I just don't think that it's healthy.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. And that will do it for us from here, Jen, live in Springfield. Jennifer Abreu, Color 10 News, Ozarks First.
All right, Jennifer, thank you. Talking about a quiet, peaceful outside of Lauren Cook. And, you know, last night we were telling you how a group of people had gotten together and kind of did a roundtable discussion to talk about how today would be quiet and how they were pushing for it to be quiet. So it seems to be working what they got together and talked about last night. Well, Joe Morano and Heather Lewis are outside Lauren Cook Company right now. And are there any police issues? We know that the president was speaking with law enforcement a little bit afterward to give his thanks. But any issues you saw out there, or has it had been quiet for you as well?
Pretty quiet for us as well, Jennifer. It's not been too bad. Some people, as we said, they closed off that walkway or this road here for people to walk by. So police turned some folks away. Still quiet now. A lot of the employees from Lauren Cook are exiting, as you see behind us right now, and a lot of smiles among the crowd, feeling a little bit inspired after that speech.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are talking about it. There are vendors actually set up here selling some Trump gear as well. So we've seen a few people stop by and talk to them as well. But everyone's flooding out. They are heading to the parking lot at Crossway Baptist Church. That's where a lot of people parked. There are also Greyhound buses that I think I can hear behind me now coming in to pick up workers and take them back to a different parking lot where a lot of people park to just kind of avoid the traffic congestion. Right now, Barnes is still closed beside us, and so expect some traffic around Kearney, around Barnes, and Glenstone. Just this whole area is pretty blocked off right now.
That's probably the most noteworthy thing, other than the president getting back to the airport now, watching out for those roads that Heather just mentioned here, because we're about to get a few hundred cars out there right now if you're looking to get out on the road soon.
Yep, that's right. And of course, we've got the people coming out now, but overall during the event, we did see some people on their phones, some people just waiting to see if they could catch a glimpse of that motorcade leaving. But overall, pretty quiet outside of Lauren Cook this afternoon during President Trump's visit.
All right, Joe and Heather, thank you so much. Well, we're going to close out this special coverage of President Donald Trump's Springfield stop today. Of course, there will be much more on today's event on the news coming up tonight at 5 and 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. And you can get more at our website, ozarksfirst.com. We'll go back to your regular programming. Thanks again for watching.